Hello, welcome to another episode of the Paragliding Debrief. Tonight in the hot seat we have a really candid interview with Theo de Blic, an incredible pilot, an incredible human being. Goes without having to have an introduction, to be honest. Most people know who he is, but he's one of those guys, we all know who he is, but do we know who he is? There's a lot that goes on in the background to become one of the world's best, to sustain a place as one of the world's best, to be considered one of the revolutionary pilots of the modern day acro. I mean, it goes without saying, this guy is an absolute legend, and this World Acro Tour between Theo and Luc Dewart was one of the most exciting championships that I've seen in a long time. The two of them competing with each other is making for an incredibly interesting competition scene, and it's bringing a lot more people to it, it's making it a lot more mainstream. So sit back, relax, let's have a chat with the man himself, Mr. Theo de Blic. Okay, so here we are. So I'm sat opposite Theo de Blic. Incredible privilege to be sat by him. How you doing, young man?
I'm good on a rest day here in Olu.
The mountain is closed, which is a massive bonus for us, because although we're quite close to each other a lot of the time, we're both working here, there's never a time in the day to get together.
No, yeah, you're on the boat, we're on the beach, and we just never see each other. We see Darcy, we see all our teams, but we don't see each other somehow. No,
just passing and helloing, and now, today, we have some time. So, Mr. Theo de Blic, there is so much I'd love to talk to you about. It's going to be a super interesting one, these. It's a great story. Your progression is an incredible story. And I think for a lot of pilots, I mean, everybody, it's fair to say that everybody around the world knows you as the creator of what the modern acro world is now. You know, there were the early guys, the SAT teams, there was the Power Tacketsies, and then there was someone that was needed to bring the sport through. And I think it's fair to say that that has been the baton that you picked up and ran with.
Yeah, I mean, what the other guys did before me, so Horacio, Raul, Paltacat, what they did was like a tremendous amount of work, and they really like built what acro is. And I think the modern acro is really came with Pal, which created the Joker, the Cowboy, and the Cork. And what I did was just include the Twisted era into it. So with the help of Raul, we kind of like pushed Twisted with the Twisted Infinite mostly. So that's where I became quite well known because of the Twisted Infinite. And then the Stall to Infinite. But I think the groundwork was done by Pal and Raul mostly. I just kind of took what they had and tried to put my little touch to it, basically.
Yeah. Which is lovely to say. You're an incredibly modest guy. You know, we've known each other for quite a long time. And, you know, to a lot of people, you and myself included, you're a hero in the acro world. But you're such a modest guy, like all of the top guys are, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when you're a professional athlete in paragliding, it's really hard to not be modest because you see that how small the sport is. So even if you are one of the best in the world, you are still surrounded by normal people, normal pilot. You know, you just see every day is pilot flying, every day is world going. So you just are living in it. You are not in a different reality like a football player could be. We just live the same world, in the same world. We have the same lives, basically.
It's one of the things I've said to a lot of people when I'm trying to describe what Organia is like. And I say, you can imagine being a big football fan and being able to turn up to your training session and all your world's favourite players are all training in the same place. When you go to Organia, you know, you go to somewhere to go training and there are the world's best and the top pilots all around you, living together, doing the same things. You know, you have access to this incredible pool of amazing pilots who are super modest, you know, super keen to give information over to help people progress.
Yeah, Organia, to me, it was exactly like this. When I arrived to Organia, this was like, there was Raul, Horacio training, and I was 14, so I was like, wow, it's amazing. I've seen these legends that I've seen only in videos. And it's true that you have access to an incredible pool of information in Organia. You have access to incredible flying time and incredible pilots. As well, you have access to a lot of different information. So Organia is amazing because of all this information, but sometimes it's a bit too much information because you have access to so many pilots, so many different ideas, styles, that sometimes it's easy to get a bit lost in between all those information. So you have to take care a bit in Organia to not get overwhelmed by how many advices you're going to get. This can be kind of too much sometimes.
Yeah. And you said something interesting there. Your first time in Organia was when you were 14.
Yeah.
So what's the story? What's the history of Theo de Blic?
So I always wanted to fly acro. I always wanted to be good. And when I heard about Organia, I thought, yeah, I should go there. I should train there. Of course, I was 14, so basically I had no way to train there. And my dad said, look, if you can pay for it, you can go there. And I think he didn't expect me to really be able to pay for it. So I budgeted my whole trip. So I was always good with math. So this was my thing, you know. I budgeted my trip. And the boss, so the owner of the school my dad was working on, just told me, look, you're going to film my SIVs. I'm going to pay you, was I think 60 euro per day, which was fairly good in cash. So I used to film the SIVs, and in the evening I used to check gliders as well a little bit. And so I made some money, and I made something like 800 euros, which I thought was enough to live in Organia, which turns out it wasn't. But I really thought it was enough. And so I arrived in Organia with those 800 euros. My dad freaked out a bit when I told him, I have the money, I'm going. I have someone who is going to pick me up and bring me there. So my dad just told me, okay, you can go, but you have to write a text to me every day. Of course, roaming at that time was not really an option. So I had to write him a text every day saying I'm okay. And he said, if I miss a text, I'm going to pick you up straight away and you are coming home. So then I was in Organia, living with 3 euros per day, which was not a lot, but just enough. And I was living in a tent, and it was kind of a quite cool experience as a 14-year-old kid. The funny thing is, I don't know if people know him, but Rafinha, the Brazilian guy, was also, he was 15,
I love him.
and he was there in a tent with his brother, so his big brother, and he had a bit more money than me, but we were in similar situation, and he was also 15 at the time, so this was quite funny. We were both 15-year-old kids in the middle of the camping, and everyone was bringing us to take off and was kind of paying attention that we didn't do so many shitty stuff. And
But
yeah.
do you realise how special that is? You guys, you were 14 years old. Raphael was 15 years old. To most pilots, you were already at a stage where you could fly well enough to be going to Organia. So where did that come from? How did you get to 14 years old and be good enough then to be flying?
I mean, when I started to fly tandems around 2 with my dad, so I was really used to flying. And around 6 or 7, I started to ground handle. So ground handling helped me a lot to get to a certain level. Before I could even fly, basically, I had already a flying finesse. You know, I could handle my wings quite well. And as soon as I started flying, I flew a lot. Like, on my first year, I probably did 200 flights. And my second year, I did hours instead of flying because my dad moved to Saint-Hilaire, and then it was a more thermal place. So I used to fly all day long there, and holidays, weekends, after school. So basically, I was flying all the time. So when I arrived at 14, I had my first acro glider, and I was flying quite a lot. I don't know if I was ready to fly in Organia, but I was there anyway. So, and it went well. I didn't have any close call in Organia in that season.
And I wonder, we were talking before the podcast about a story I have from you, which now, for me, it's quite amazing all these years on that we're now sat face to face, you know, we're friends and we're recording a podcast. Years and years ago, and it might have been that season, I don't know. But I remember every summer I would finish with my paragliding school. I'd take my camper van, I would go and I would live in Organia for June, July, August. It's amazing. I love the atmosphere of it. I love the whole ethos of Organia, the brotherhood, the family, the flying. It was amazing. Now I remember waking up one morning and clearly, I don't know if it was the first season, maybe it was the second, but your name had already, you know, people could start to see, and to be fair with Rafa, people could start to see these young kids doing incredibly well and being really dedicated. You know, in Organia, you can kind of wake up, do your thing in the morning, go for a swim, go to town. Around 2, 3 o'clock, you can go up, maybe 3, maybe 4, and you'll still fly for 4 or 5 hours. And I remember waking up one morning in my camper van, and I made a cup of tea, because I'm very English. So I made a cup of English tea, and I came out and I sat. It was about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, and I saw you take off. And I was like, oh, that's the young kid that Theo they're talking about. And I remember watching you taking a while to climb and climb and climb and climb and climb. And then you went up to the right-hand side. Or maybe it's the left. Honestly, I can't remember if it was the right or left.
It was probably left. I'm a left side.
Yeah, I think it was the left corner of the ridge. And I remember drinking my tea, and you got up there and you just started doing heli. Really clean heli. Heli, stopping it, twister, heli, you know, one side, the other side. And then I cycled into town. I went and got my stuff, some food, bits and bobs, thinking I'll be flying in a few hours. I remember coming back, you were still there. Climbing up, going out, doing manoeuvres in the corner, going back, going out. I had an entire day before I even contemplated going up the mountain, and you were there. Then I went up the mountain, I had my flying day, 3 or 4 hours, flying around, it was great. You were there. Then I landed, and I went back to my camper van, probably made another couple of English tea, or at that time of night maybe an English beer, being English, and you were still there. And I remember then thinking, that is some kind of extraterrestrial dedication.
Well, the funny thing is, I think it was my second season, because my first season I never went up before 4 p.m. because I was only with Spanish people,
Yeah.
and the Spanish told me it's not flyable before 4 p.m. And on my second senior season, I arrived day one in Organia, and François Ragolski was there, and he's famous for training quite a lot also. And so at 11 or something, he told me, I'm going to the takeoff, you're coming. And I was like, no, it's not flyable before 4. And he said, you kidding? Just come. And then I discovered that Organia is actually flyable before 4.
Yes.
And it's flyable from quite early on
Yeah.
until the end of the evening. And I think that's this season where I really discovered Organia as I know it today,
Yeah.
which is training from as soon as it's flyable until it's not flyable anymore. And basically, I'm addicted to training.
Yeah.
What I love the most is not competing, it's training. And what I love is to perfect my tricks, to make them better. And so from very early on, I think that's what allowed me to fly like I am flying today, is that I was able to dedicate my whole day to training and to fly and to fly and to fly only, and to repeat and repeat and repeat. And I don't mind it, actually. I'm really happy at the end of the day if I've flown 10 hours, repeated the same tricks for 10 hours, that's where I'm the happiest.
Yeah.
So that sounds like me. That's
Yes,
something that
and we were, it wasn't just that day. There were a number of examples. It's still the same now, Theo. Even here, at the level you're at, even here now, you're still at the mountain all the time. Whenever you get a flyable window, or you're not doing the SIV course with the rise, you're at the mountain.
Yeah, I try to fly as much as possible. So until I think 2 years ago, I was always the first in the air in Organia and always the last. Since we are moving to 13 square meters, it's starting to be really hard to be the first in the air now, because we are bombing out quite a lot. So usually I'm not in the first in the air anymore. I'm waiting for some 15 square meters to climb so I can climb. But I'm always trying to fly the most, because in my head, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but the one who flies the most is the one who's going to win at the end of the day and at the end of the season. So I'm always thinking, if I fly the most, then I'm going to win 100% sure. And so I try to fly as much as possible.
So when I saw you were 15. And for a lot of kids at 15 years old, they don't really know what they want to do with life. They're trying to work out options. They're not really sure. At 15 years old, when I saw you then, the dedication and training you were doing, what was your mindset then? Were you believing and going to be world champion? Were you just training to have fun? What was the mindset of a 15-year-old Theo de Blic?
Well, I dream a lot. When I'm awake, I daydream a lot. And I used to always imagine situations. And mainly I was trying to focus on thinking maybe one day I might compete and I might win a World Cup. I would like to be a world champion. At that time, that was my main motivation. It was a childish, dream. Mm-hmm. So until like 16 something, that was my main motivation. And then at 16, I heard something that marked me. I heard anyway, you should not dedicate so much time flying because there is no professional prospect within flying. And then I tried to think it through. And what I understood is that there was a professional prospect in flying. So becoming world champion became not as important to me. I really wanted to make a living flying. And this is what motivated me from that point on, more or less.
And how come it was acro, not cross country, for example?
Funnily enough, it's my dad's fault, mostly. My dad is a paragliding instructor. He was flying mostly cross-country, but he was interested in acro, but he was doing wingovers, and he started to do helis when I was starting to fly, but he stopped kind of there. But my dad was a bit afraid because I was 12, and he was afraid I would cross-country, and I would land somewhere, had to hitchhike from super far away. So he was not super keen into letting me wander around too much. And so he said, okay, what I would like you to do is to do acros, and you are here, so I can watch you. And you are training here, and also it improves your skills. So when you want to fly cross-country, you're going to be better, you're going to be safer, and I will feel better. So I started to fly acro that way. And really, I loved it. And at that time, my friends who were Tim and Elliot and all the instructors in the school actually were flying acro. So they were just pushing for acro flying. So I just, bite into it. The funny thing is, rapidly, so at 14, I ended up not flying cross-country, but I ended up going all the way to Organia to fly, which was kind of the same feeling as if I was flying cross-country. Yeah. And I used to hitchhike to any good acro place, whether it was Saint-Hilaire, Vérel. I even hitchhiked from Organia one time. So anyway, in the end, the problem was exactly the same, just from a different perspective.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And how did you, was it completely overwhelmed life? That was the only thing? Did you have other hobbies? Were you into other things at the time? Or did it completely suck you in 100%?
No, yeah, it sucked me in. I was only focused on acro flying. I was watching videos and videos and videos. And if I had a break at school, I would hitchhike to fly. As soon as I came from school, I would fly. I was just flying. I had no other interest, no other hobbies. I was plainly flying only.
And at the time, like, were you doing SIV courses, acro courses? Were you just going and learning from people? Were you already starting to see, well, if I do this and I pull this way, this is possible? How did you learn tricks, or how did you, at that age, pick up that skill level?
Well, I did first an SIV course within the school of my dad, so that the instructors there taught me to stall, etc. And rapidly I had a certain level where actually at that time acro courses didn't exist. You just did an SIV course, did collapse stalls, and that's it. And there was no one coaching acro flying at all. So you would learn from videos. So I used to spend a lot of time on Dailymotion at that time and YouTube to watch videos of others. I used to make my own small edit of acro videos, and I was like watching them and comparing them with what I was doing. So that was mainly how I learned to fly the tricks. And also I was lucky enough that I was surrounded by some acro pilots who were trying to help me, but also they had no clear idea of how they were doing things. Also, it was the very beginning, so no one had a clear idea of how things were done. So it was a bit like, it was a try and fail and see, and what comes.
See, now for a lot of people, and what I really love when you talk to a lot of the top acro pilots is there's a lot of fear involved with trying new things. I mean, did you find there was fear, but if you push through the fear, you get to that reward at the end, you conquer the trick, it feels great, you do the next thing. How did you deal with that, learning new stuff, pushing yourself all the time?
So this speaks to me more now than it did at that time. Fear at that time was not something that I had at all. I was fearless. I was a kid, so you are completely fearless,
of course.
In my mind, there was no way that I would end up in trouble. And I remember many times where actually during my school break, I would try to trim my glider to make it work in infinite, and I would arrive to school with like the mark of the riser maiden around the eye because I had fell into the glider, and it was a big mess, So I was completely fearless, and this was a non-event for me. Like, it was just another Thursday, and towards the end, when I arrived to the stall to infinite, and there was a fear aspect that I had to overpass and to overcome, and to say, okay, I'm pushing through that in order to manage. But this came way later. Until I was like past 18, I was fearless completely.
And how do you do that? Because one of the things with a lot of acro pilots, and they can't train all the time, they have jobs and other things to do, and a lot of the thing that holds a lot of people back is the fear. And sometimes it's difficult to give the right advice to try and push them through that fear. How did you push yourself through that fear?
Well, what I tried to understand was that at some point there is stress and there is fear, and I tried to separate them. I know that if I'm afraid, something is really wrong. If I'm stressed, it's normal. So I tried to understand what was the difference between them. And usually, so when I'm going for a new trick or training something, I try to imagine all the possible outcomes and all the possible things that I could do wrong, and try to think of something to solve them up. Either it's pulling my rescue, or it's stalling that special cravat, or solving that twist. But I try to think of all the possible outcomes. And then if I'm arriving to the box and I feel that I'm stressed, it's normal, because I know what's going to happen if I fuck up, but I have an idea of what I should do if I fuck up. If I'm afraid, it means that usually I haven't thought about everything, because there is something that I don't know and it's making me scared. So then I have to rethink my process. So if I'm afraid, usually it's because I didn't think this through, and if I'm stressed, it's okay. But sometimes it's hard to separate them to know which one you are feeling at that exact moment.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to tell to people. If you're stressed, it's good. If you're afraid, you did something wrong somewhere.
Interesting, yeah. Because paragliding as a whole is a really psychological game.
Yeah.
And it's the bit that people fear. Oh, not fear. Sorry. It's the bit that people struggle with the most. Is to deal with the fear, the nervousness, and it's a very good way of looking at it. And so you were training, you were going to Orgagna, you were training super hard for year after year, and then the comp scene started coming. When did it start coming from Theo de Blic, the amateur pilot, getting into comps, getting good, to when it really started becoming a career?
Actually, it even became a career before the comps, somehow. So when I was like 15 and a half, around 16, one friend of my dad started to sell Icaro, and Icaro just released Nikita. And he said, okay, you're going to be good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sell you this glider for, it was 1,000 euro, was cost price. So I borrowed money from my mom and my dad and bought the glider. And so I started to train with it, and the glider was not super good for infinite. It was pretty bad, to be honest. And because at that time, some gliders were good, some gliders were bad, but it was like depending on the batch, it was like no clear glider that was always good. You could buy a glider, it was shit, and you could buy the same glider 2 weeks later, and it was good.
Yes.
So this was a bit of a mess. And my glider was so-so. So it was not very good, not very bad, but was so-so. And I started to trim it so that it worked in infinite. And somehow my trim started to work good, and even pretty good. And when I went to Icaro with that trim, they were quite impressed, and they offered me a contract straight away. And after a few weeks of that contract, I think they were quite happy with what I had done. And what they told me was, okay, we're going to pay for you to compete. So they're going to pay expenses, travel, and some small money for training. And we are going to give you money through every wing you sell. So as soon as you sell a wing, you're going to get money. And I was like, bro, this is amazing. So what I did is I started to sell wings, like candies. So I sold, I think, 25 wings in my first year.
Wow.
I sold a lot of wings. I made quite good money, and I was 16, and it was like super good. And what I understood early on is that no one is paying you to train. No brand wants to pay you to train, but everyone would like you to compete. So then I went to see other sponsors, and I said, look, I was 16, sorry, and I need to compete, and would you pay for my travel expenses to go to comps? And everyone said, yes, of course. So what I did is that every time I was going to comp, I was getting my travel expenses refunded 3 or 4 or 5 times. So I was making money, and that's how I made a living actually quite early on by getting that amount of money. And then I was like, when I turned 18, then I had real professional contract with a salary. But before that, I was already making money just through like wiggling my way around contracts and stuff.
It's incredible. At 16 years old.
Yeah.
And then how do you keep the maturity? So you're 16 years old, everything's starting to happen. I mean, people were talking about your name a lot then. You could see there was something about you. You could see you were going to be world champion, or you were going to be something very special. How at 16 years old do you deal with that pressure?
The funny thing is, I didn't see it that way when I was 16 because there was Tim Alonji and Elliot Noshes, which were a lot better than me. They were more famous, they were a lot better, and they had like way more potential. And everyone was telling me from in my face that they had more potential than me and they were better than me. So I was 16 and I was just like, okay, they're a lot better. I'm never gonna anyway make it past them. So that's why I was not worrying about it so much, because I was like, yeah, I'm just making my way. And for me, it was kind of a game still, it was like not something I could make a career of. When I decided to make a career of was way later than this. But at that time, I was just making money enough to go to Organia, to go to comps, and that was like already good enough. And I thought I would go to university and find a job. That was the plan at the beginning, of course.
What job would you have done? So if paragliding happened, if Theo de Blic was not Theo de Blic in paragliding, what would Theo de Blic have been?
I would have been an engineer,
Okay.
I guess. I would have probably went into an engineer career. I'm really glad I didn't, but that would have been what I would have aimed for. But the thing is, before I even had that option, then I got offered a good contract. And then when I made the math of how much an engineer makes and how much I was making, then I was like, this makes no sense. I'm making the same money flying and training in Organia than I would make on my first year as an engineer. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Then I try my luck and maybe I'm going to make it through. And if I do not, you never look more than 2 or 3 years in front. When you're like 20, you're like, if I do not make it, I will be still 23.
Yeah.
Then I can go to school back and I can become an engineer and it's no problem.
It's funny. So I did a podcast with Bruce Goldsmith recently, and before he got into hang gliding and then later on paragliding, he was an engineer. And so many people that I meet that are in the glider trimming, the design, the improvement process are all kind of from a mental or physical engineering background. There's something about that engineer's kind of brain and thought process that really applies to the modernization and trimming and what have you of gliders.
Yeah, if you really want to work on gliders, you need to have an engineer mindset. You don't need to have the engineer's degree, which some of them do not have.
Yeah.
But the engineering mindset is important. But yet, it's not compulsory. Like, if you want to be a pilot, you don't have to trim gliders. You don't have to. Some example of the pro pilot today are not trimming gliders at all. When you wanted to be a pro pilot, when I was young, you needed to trim gliders. It was not an option. You could not make money if you were not making your gliders. There was no way.
Yeah.
So yeah, was mainly like this. But it was 10 years ago. Now you can be a pro pilot.
Yeah.
And not work on your gliders.
And time went on, so you were an understudy. There were the I forgot the names now. Say again.
Tim and Elliot.
Yes,
Yeah.
well done. Incredible pilots, still incredibly well-respected pilots now.
Yeah.
And so you were up and coming. You started to do the comms and what have you. And then when did the real acceleration progress kind of happen, or the acceleration point where suddenly you started to become equal, or you started to push ahead?
I think it happens, I would say around 2012, 2013. It's where I started to understand that they were not training as much as me. They were not training as efficiently as me, and that's where I started to understand that I was not very good at flying, but I was very good at training. This is my thing. I'm not someone who is gonna learn super fast, who is gonna like be considered super talented in flying, but in training I'm really talented. I can focus all my energy, I can focus all my time in training, and I can really train efficiently. I can be quite efficient in training, and I think that's when I started to kind of get really good comp-wise and also flying-wise, because I was really putting the amount of training that allowed me to really suddenly grow my skills tremendously.
And to be able to physically cope with that amount of training, was there gym work?
No, at that time I was just training. I was waking up, going to train, doing emails in the morning, going to train, and I was doing nothing. And now I start to have to need to cope with that. So fortunately for me, I think what saved me is that around 2015 something, I started to do a lot of train running, and I started to run a lot, and this helped me to overpass the moment where I'm getting older and I need to do more physical exercises in order to train. And so that was kind of the same moment where my body needed it and I started to do it, but it was not planned or anything. And now I'm almost 30 and I feel that I really need to train a bit in the winter. I still need to run and I still need to exercise a bit to cope with all the training in the years that we are doing.
I mean, when we talk about your personal physical fitness, you trained hard enough, again with an incredible amount of dedication, to actually enter the Red Bull XLs, and that is a incredible competition for. I mean, it's athletes. Yeah. You know, it's not for the normal person. How did the training for that go? I mean, how was being in something, some kind of event like that is so huge and so incredibly demanding?
Well, it's a funny story. So I used to be quite fat when I was a kid, until I was 21 something years. I was overweight, and then I started to train running, hike and fly mostly, and I lost a lot of weight. It was not the plan. I was just doing hike and fly because I had free time. It's when I started to make more money flying, so I had more time to actually focus on doing something else, And so I was training and I started to feel that I was quite good, and everyone started to see that I was running a lot, doing a lot of hike and fly, and everyone said, oh, you should enter the XALP. And in my mind, it was not a competition I could ever enter, because first I was not really athletic and I was a bit overweight, and I was not even playing cross country. And so I was like, yeah, okay, why not? And the idea started to grow, and I started to enter some small hike and fly races. And I kind of was like, okay, I will try to enter the XALP and see, but I never wanted to enter the XALP to perform there. I just wanted to say, it was more a time where the XALP, everyone could enter and you were selected because there was not so many people who wanted to get in, So I was like, okay, I will try to enter the XALP. And I tried to enter the first year, I think, where there was a huge pool of French athletes who wanted to get in. So I didn't get in 2019. And so I kind of thought, okay, anyway, I'm not really into cross country. What I love is acro, and I was not planning to train so much cross country. I was just trained physically. And so then after the COVID, Nova wanted to boost a little bit the cross country part. And they told me, okay, you still want to go into XALP? And I was like, yeah, why not? But it was not a real plan still in my head. And they say, I'm going to make the wing for you. So I was like, okay, if they make the wing for me, I need to train and I need to get into XALP. And because I think at that time, and it's still kind of the case, XALP was more interested in what is your background and how much marketing you can bring to the race rather than your skill set. The XALP guy told me, you're going to be in. And they told me, if you apply now, you're a three-time acro world champion, you're going to be in, no problem. So I was like, okay, then I'm going to be in, so I will enter. But my plan was never to perform there. It was just to take part and to see what it was. And that's more or less what I did. Even though I didn't perform as well as I would have, that's how I ended up in the XALP.
Wow. I mean, what an experience. And I don't think people realise, I mean, this year was one of the most exciting Red Bull XALPs I've seen. People don't realise how hard it is. The complexity of the flying, the places you're expected to fly, try and land, the distances, the hills, the mountains that you're climbing?
Which was interesting. So my year when I did the XL was shit weather. It was terrible.
I remember.
It was only rain and wind, rain and wind. So basically, my lack of cross country skills was really painful in that year. I think I would have been better off in a year where it's more flyable. I would have not have been super fast, but at least I would have been able to be more efficient, you know. But that year we had shitty conditions. At least we had really turbulent conditions. So everyone told me that it was a shit year, super dangerous to fly, which I didn't think so. When I was there, I thought it was not super hardcore conditions, but also I was taking a lot of care in order to not injure myself, because I injured myself just before the XL and I didn't want to injure myself again. And I had other goals in that season, so I really needed to take care. But otherwise, it was really hard, mostly mentally rather than physically. Physically, it's really hard because you are walking a lot, etc. But I thought it was more mentally because the sleep deprivation is huge. It's really hard to imagine it. And I think they changed the rules this year because of the year we had where the sleep deprivation was really tough for everyone. Yeah. And the sleep deprivation is really tough, and you make a lot of mistakes, particularly as a rookie, and those mistakes really put you in the back, and it's really hard to actually come back. In my race, I came back 3 times from the back to the mid pack, and back to the mid pack, and you're like always thinking it's the last day and it's your last day, and then you fly again and you manage to climb back. So it's a tough race, but mostly mentally. Physically, it's really tough. I'm not saying it's not tough, but I'm saying that since everyone is kind of trained to it, it's okay. It's manageable. But the mental part is the hard part.
Yeah. And so doing stuff like that, that's more based on cross country. You've never, I mean, clearly not. I mean, I watch you fly now. I watch your enthusiasm. This season, the Acro World Tour this season, between you and Luke, has been one of the most fascinating, interesting, like the most exciting. You guys are bringing excitement to the competition scene, you know. And you've never got bored. Like a lot of acro pilots, I remember talking to Pal, and he said, you know, it got to the point where he was done with it. He didn't have the motivation to train anymore. That doesn't seem to be an issue with you from what I've seen from you the last couple of weeks.
No, I don't have this issue. I think I'm someone who is able to really do one thing, and I'm able to do one thing and not get bored with it. And I love it. I still love it. I love to train. I hate to compete. I like to win. Also, winning now is weird because I'm not happy when I win, but I'm really sad when I lose. So it's a bit sad to compete now. Yeah. But I do love to compete. I think deep down. But what I love the most is to train and to push myself to fly better and better and better. So I don't know. I don't lose motivation, and I feel that first of all, I'm paid so well for what I'm doing that I need to enjoy it. Yes. There is no way anyone is earning my money and is not enjoying his life. It's just not possible. It's
important to remember that, because it's easy to suddenly let it all go past and not stop to enjoy the moment you have,
And I love it, and every time I'm waking up and I'm in Organia, I'm like, fuck, it looks like a good flyable day. I'm going to fly, and I'm so happy, to train and to try some new tricks or to just train a clean run, and this makes me happy. And I don't know, I don't lose motivation, and I don't think I will for quite some time still.
And you're like, I remember during the COVID period, somehow you disappeared for a little while, came back with all these new twisted tricks. So you'd obviously had some thoughts going through your head, and then from nowhere, just and it saved COVID actually, because there wasn't, life was a complete mess. And then Theo comes out with all these twisted tricks, and then it was something to really focus on and watch. And even now, I mean, you've been pushing so many, you've been inventing and perfecting and making combination of so many tricks. Is there a finite point where Theo de Blic cannot possibly do something else with a glider?
I hope not. Whether it's me or someone else, I think that most of the things I did were not really new tricks, but they were just like, I was training and I had reached a point where I could not train anything else. So I was just thinking, I could do this and it's fun, and it was not really aimed at being a new trick. So for example, during the COVID time, I was just locked at home for 2 months, and then I managed to get to Organia. We were alone in Organia, there was no one, and we were just training there, and it was cool. We were a small group of pilots. And then we had no comps, so I had no need to train for comps, so I was just letting my mind wander around and trying to do those twisted tricks. But I hope that there is no limit. I hope that there will always be something to push, whether it's me or someone else. And I do hope that when someone else is going to push, I will still have the motivation to kind of catch back, because that's what you lose first is the motivation to try to catch back, and also the motivation to take the risk to catch back, because as soon as you get older, learning something new gets harder. And I think that's when I'm gonna stop competing, is when I'm gonna stop to be able to actually push to try to catch back when someone does something new.
The other thing, just having known you for a while now, like, you know, this season, incredibly close, you know, and it's been I think it's been the first time in 5 years that someone really has been close to you. Like, for me, the acro comps in the last 5 years have been a battle for second place and more. It was always, well, Theo's going to win, so who's going to get second, third, fourth?
Yeah, basically in the last 5 years, I've won most of them. When I lost was either I was injured, so I could not come, or the only time I really lost was when I went for the World Championship, and it was the day after the X-Alp. So I came back from the X-Alp, and it was a challenge there. But this year was really close, and Luke trained a lot, and actually trained as much as me, so which didn't happen also in a long time. No one really trained as much as me in a long time, and Luke really focused on training as much as me, and we ended up like neck and neck the whole season.
Unbelievable, Theo. I was like, you were just waiting for them, and you had some comps over ground. There was a few new things going on.
Yeah, we had the comps above ground, which were a new concept. We had a lot of things, and in the end I ended up winning 3 events out of 5, and Luke won 2, but in the end Luke won the tour, and it was an incredibly close battle. And when I look back at that world tour, I can see I made 2 mistakes over 17 runs. 2 mistakes when Luke made some mistakes as well, which cost him less because the mistake he made were smaller. So that was all down to 2 small mistakes, which incredibly enough are rules mistakes that I made. So basically I'm supposed to be the one who is the math guy, who is planning his run.
Yes.
And the 2 mistakes I made were not technical mistakes in the air, but were mistakes in the rules, which was really painful to me.
Yes, yeah. And then one thing I find amazing, I mean, what I love as well is it's competitive. You know, you're flying at top level, and it's a top level competition, but you guys are also friends.
Yeah, we are friends, and with Luke we're actually quite good friends. We spend a lot of time together.
You flew the synchro together. I mean, if I was going in for a synchro comp and it was you and Luke in the comp, I'd go home.
Yeah.
Or it would be for second place. To see you two flying together.
You should not go home, because we actually do not train synchro at all. We never train synchro. So we flew synchro because we had a good chance to win, because we knew no one is training. But as soon as someone training is going to beat us 100%.
Right,
you know? So, but Luke and I were good friends, and we actually spent quite a lot of time together last year, and a lot this year. He came to live close to my house for 1 month this spring, and then we were living next to each other in Organia for a while. So yeah, we are good friends, and I think you can compete with a good friend. It doesn't matter, because it's not like we are not fighting.
Yes.
You know, we are trying to fly our best, and then we are judged by people, and we land, and whether I'm fucking up is not Luke's fault, and if Luke is fucking up, it's not my fault. You know, there is like no link between me doing a good performance and Luke not doing it, or the opposite. It's just your own fault, whether you are like not flying good or not. So like, it's really easy to stay friends, you know, because you're like, it's never the other one's fault. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite good.
That's what I love. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is you know how close you guys are. You share. I mean, it's a difficult thing to be a pro acro pilot, traveling around, having to train, live. You know, it looks great on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. Then people go back to their lives and they look at the next round and it looks great again. In the meantime, you guys are traveling all over the place, all over the world.
Yeah, this is the hardest part for me. I'm someone who loves home. I don't party. I don't go out. What I do normally in my free time is I read in my couch, you know. So I love my home, and I haven't been in my home in the last 6 months, so I'm missing it.
And where is home for Theo de Blic?
It's Chambéry. It's in the French Alps. It's an amazing place, and I usually train there in spring and in winter. But this winter I was in Yemen, in Socotra. Then I was in the Canarias, and then in spring I was here, and then in Organia. So basically I haven't been home like in a long time, you know. And so this is the hard part. But on the other hand, we are traveling around, we are having fun, we are flying. So this is a good life. It's just a really hard life because, first of all, we are doing one job. And the job I'm doing, 1,000 people would like to take it. Mm-hmm. And so you have to fight a bit every day to keep that job because it's not that easy. And it's a job that involves a lot of skills. So you need to do a lot of different things. You need to do marketing, you need to do accounting, you need to do emails, you need to do administration, you need to train, you need to fly good, you need to compete, you need to do the set of skills you need to do that job is actually quite hard. And that's what people don't imagine. They imagine that it's just about flying and flying good. But no, you need a huge set of skills. And I think most of my time and my money is made behind the computer, just
Yeah.
doing like business meetings and
And
stuff.
it's not just all of that. You know, Theo de Blic, the SIV acro instructor. You
Yeah.
know, you've been doing that. Did I hear a story? You were in China with like 120 students or something like that.
No, it was not 120. It was in Indonesia at least.
Right.
And it was like my first SIV. So I had filmed SIVs a lot, and we had done SIVs with the French national team for young pilots. So I had quite a lot of experience doing SIVs, but not with groups. I usually had like 3-4 people. I had done private coaching or stuff like this, you know. And then there was an SIV in Indonesia, and they told me, you want to come? I said, yeah, okay, no problem. Was supposed to be 2 groups of 8. So I arrived there, was supposed to be 16 days there. I arrived there and there is 60 people, 63 people. And I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? I'm in front of this group of 63 people and I'm asking them, okay, I'm here for 15 days. Are the group split in several groups? You know, and they're like, no, it's 63 people, 16 days. And you can, I mean, you're an SIV instructor, you can imagine day 1, equipment check. This was like, I had 63 gear to check and I was alone, and most of them were not even speaking English. And so I was opening rescues, and after like the, I think 10th or 11th rescues, I'm like, this cannot work.
Yeah.
And most of them were fucked up. The rescues, you see how many fucked up gear we actually get as a SIV instructor
Yes.
with English people and
Yes.
American people. Imagine in Indonesia, it was like
Oh my God.
everything was fucked. I had to repack each rescue. So I was like, this is not gonna work. So after like, I told them, okay, we're gonna take 1 day for the equipment check. What I'm gonna do here is a rescue. We're gonna pack it together. You're gonna watch how I'm packing it, and then you're gonna make group of 3, and you're gonna pack 3
Well
rescue
done.
each. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we spent the whole day packing rescues. Then I noticed that none of them spoke English. Then I had to find a way. So I taught them 10 English words, and it's kind of created a mess. But I had 60 students, not 120.
Okay.
Still, this was a
Still
lot.
pretty bad.
Yeah, and it was my first SIV, so it was like, wow.
And how did it go? Because it's not even really like you can talk to them clearly in terms of the specific technical bits in that split moment or something.
Yeah, it went that I found a translator who was pretty good.
Okay.
So he was translating the briefings, and I taught them those 10 words, and basically in the briefing I tried to tell them, okay, I'm gonna say you that, and you're gonna do that, and you're gonna do that. Fortunately, it was Asian people who are really good at following commands, and they are like, the yes but doesn't exist in Asian. You tell them you're gonna do that, and they say yes, okay. So this really saved me a lot of time.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing was the place was complete shit. I had 300 meters maximum for the course, so it was like a bit scary sometimes, and the gliders were for most of them quite bad. But otherwise, the course ran quite clearly. In the air was not so many close calls, I would say. I had organized them in a group of 10, so as soon as 10 landed, I was briefing, and then 10 over, so I started at 7 a.m. The first guy was in the air and until 9 a.m. And this worked quite okay. I got used to it and even started to like it. Then I went to China, which was the same process, and I even liked it because it's different to a normal SIV. You are doing SIVs to people who have no idea about flying. They learn to fly in a country where flying doesn't exist. There is no theory, there is no training. So those people, they need a lot of information, but you cannot give them the same information as you would give in Europe.
Yes.
First of all, air laws doesn't exist. It's not the same. So you have a lot of information you have to give differently. So you're really trying to go to the point, and that's what I liked about it. You go to the point, and really you try to give them as much information as they need in order to survive, not to get so much better, but to survive.
Yes.
And that's what I liked.
Brilliant. And do you still do that now? I mean, now you've established Rise with Cesar, with Blaze, with Jack. And is that do you still do those foreign SIVs as well?
Yeah, I still do. I stopped it for 3 years now because of COVID, so I could not go to China. But I'm going to China again in November, so I have a group of 24 or something there. Yeah. So I will go to China in November. And I still do it. I like it, and I will keep doing it. All for Rise take also a lot of our time because the plan at the beginning when I was doing the Chinese and Indonesian courses it was the only courses I was doing. So I was dedicating like 4 weeks per year, 2 weeks in spring, 2 weeks in autumn to it. And then no Rise took over those 3 times that I had, and I cannot dedicate so much time. I need to train. I need to train for comps. So I cannot dedicate so much time, but I will go again this year.
when Rise, how did Rise come about? The starting of the company that's now, you've established yourselves incredibly well here in London. You're a very well respected company worldwide, pretty much. How did that come together?
It was a funny story. So we were good friends with Jack. We used to live together in Organia. We shared a house together, and we were good friends. And Jack was doing his SIV with you. So you're starting his SIV instructor career with you, and I was doing my SIV in Indonesia and China. And we were talking because Jack was his early career also as a professional pilot. And we were starting about retirement and how it was going to be, okay, how are we going to make money when we are retiring? And we said, oh yeah, but an SIV school, that could be okay because we can work in spring and in autumn and we can even fly and it's nice. And we're like, okay, but it costs money. And we're like, maybe if we team up, it's going to cost less money. So we're like, okay, it's good. And then we were like, what we could do is to start it now, straight away. And we start slowly in order to keep training. And when we retire, we increase Rise. And then it's good, we have a client base and then we can live from it. It didn't go as planned. First of all, COVID hit straight away,
yes.
So it was painful. We were fortunate we arrived with you, who also had a half group. We had both half groups and we teamed up.
Thank God for that day.
Yeah, that we saved a lot of money by teaming up. And so then that year, it worked more or less like we planned. We worked 3 weeks in the year, and then the next year we were full, overbooked straight away. So we had to add 1 more week. Then it was overbooked again. We had to add 1 more week, and no, actually, it's not a retirement plan anymore. We have to hire people, and it starts to be quite big. So it's quite nice, and I think I really love it. With Jack, I think we are quite really proud of what we achieved with Rise. The funny thing is, we thought we would touch the English and French market, and somehow we got hit by the American market.
Yeah,
and
absolutely, yes.
Almost 70% of our clients are Americans somehow. I don't know how that happened. But it happened, and it's quite nice, actually.
Yeah. And what's been amazing is thanks to you guys doing that, a lot more of the Americans now are prepared to travel, are prepared to leave the States, are prepared to come over to Europe, to come here, to train. And you see more and more having the confidence. A few people went out and foraged, and now there's a lot of confidence. We see so many coming over, getting trained. It's amazing.
Yeah, we have a lot of Americans coming to Readings. I don't know if it's because of us, but what I know is that right now, if you look on the beach, you will see at least 4 or 5 instructors on the beach who are all Rise students. So I don't know where we fucked up, but we fucked up somewhere along the way because we actually trained a lot of competitions.
Yes, isn't that true? So there was a case, and again, I don't want to sound defensive, and I've said it before. There was a few cases of see one, do one, teach one.
Yeah.
And it has been. You've seen a lot of people all of a sudden. You've gone, oh my god. You're ended up almost training your own competition. Yeah. How you stop that? How that? I don't know. It's it's one of those things.
I don't know how this happened. I think SIV looks really easy to teach when you look from the outside. I think, and when people think about SIVs, they're like, okay, I make them collapse, I make them reopen, and it's gonna be quite okay. But I think you will agree with me. You need a certain background to anticipate a lot of what's gonna happen because. Sometimes in SIV we see crazy shit. Yes. It's incredible, and you need to have the right input for the pilot to really sort it out. So I don't know when it happens that people starting to train other people in SIV after just doing an SIV and starting to training people. But I do think that there is a certain background needed to really do SIVs and acro courses even more. So right now we are seeing some acro pilots who are training other acro pilots with. They are not even reaching the top of acro at the moment, and I'm wondering how this is working actually.
Yeah, I mean everything is great when it's great, but it's when it goes wrong.
Yeah,
it's having the skills, the knowledge to be able to help a pilot, for the pilot to have that knowledge to be able to correct it themselves. And the big worry is, the gliders are working really well, everything's great, we're all having a wonderful time. But when things happen, and the problem is most of the time it's not dangerous, they'll get away with it. It will start to knock at the confidence of pilots, and I think it's been brilliant seeing the Rise come through. I've been doing SIVs for a while. There's some really good examples of how popular SIV is getting. We're always busy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And we run the risk of going backwards a step. It's been a hard fight for us all together to make SIVs popular and to show that they're fun because they're done by the right people with the right knowledge. If we're not careful and incidents start to happen, we can start to go back a step and they start to get this reputation again of...
I think right now Holiday is really well known for SIV right now, but a lot of the things happening in Holiday are really done a bit on the edge for many schools, like the schools who do not have boats and those kind of stuff. I think we are really few schools to actually hire a boat.
Absolutely.
And so it's quite important to, I think, kind of think this through also when you are booking an SIV, to check that the school you are booking is using the proper installation, like the boat guide, the cameras, all those things that are important for your progress and for your safety. Most importantly, for your safety, this is really important.
Yeah.
So I think this is important, but also the student job to check who is gonna go with, and whether he's gonna go with someone who is well established as an SIV school, because there is a lot of great SIV school around the world. ANSI has great instructors, great installation, Olu Denis, Garda, but you really need to, I think, pay attention to make sure that you have what's necessary for your safety within that school.
Absolutely. Like a boat, a simple thing like a safety boat in the water. It's a fundamental part of a course to have a safety boat. But how many people
actually, you're the boat of most SIVs. Like, you pick up so many people from... Oh, we can't see because you are on the boat, we are not on the boat. So I think our boat is picking up people, but you do pick up by yourself a lot of people in the water.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And they know that we're out there and they rely on that. It's not right because we might not always be out there. I might be dealing with someone. I might have my back. It's not...
It is complicated, so I think that's quite important, and maybe SIV instructors in Oludenis should actually be aware that they should actually hire a boat.
I agreed 100%.
It's incredible that they don't.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And, take that, for the guys listening to this, take that into your decision when you're booking courses. Make sure your school has a safety boat available for you.
Yeah.
And speaking of safety, something that was great, something that you really did that I love, that changed the mindset of a lot of people, is taking EMBs and go and have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There was always this, get a large size acro glider, or just go for an acro glider, or some of the freestyle gliders that you assume will be, they're freestyle, they'll be safe, that, they were vicious, people were having problems. And then you said, guys, you don't need to get all this fancy acro kit. An EMB is perfectly good.
Yeah, the story behind that is I used to be a test pilot from when I was 18 to something like 23 or something. I used to do a lot of test pilot jobs. And one of those test pilot jobs was Gradient, told me we want to make a freestyle glider. And I told them, okay, I want it to be an ENB glider. And what they did is they took an ENA glider and changed it quite a lot. And the glider was super hardcore. And I tried the glider, I told them, guys, this is super hardcore. This is not at all what I expected. And they told me, we don't care. We sell it anyway. So do your best. And I was kind of, a bit angry about it. So the glider had my name on it and it was like a bit weird. And so straight after this, when I left Gradient, I was like, okay, but there are great big gliders out there. And I think I should actually, instead of trying to convince people to buy a freestyle glider or to convince brand to make a freestyle glider, I should rather aim for people to use a big glider. And I was also, because I come from a pretty poor background, I was also, in my head, people should buy one glider and be able to do everything that they would like on it. They should not have to buy, because most people with their skill set, they are very good under a big glider. They can do the cross country they want because they do 60k and they are super happy. They land with a beer and it's an amazing day. And they do thermaling in their home spot. They need a big glider. They don't need a sea glider. They don't need a hike and fly, a hike and fly glider, a cross country glider, an acro glider. They just need a big glider and to enjoy their life. And I really wanted to show them, okay, you just need to buy a big glider. You fly acro, you fly cross country, you fly hike and fly, you fly whatever you want, but you have this glider, it's going to cost you one glider and that's it. Yeah. And that was my my main focus when I was. And
because of that, there was a lot of people then going, "Ooh, take an EMB glider. The ozone buzz is very good for playing around, very good for helis." Then along came the Epic, and people started going, "Wow, the Epic's a low NP that's starting to work." And Theo was right. We're getting these pilots now. We're jumping on these low end EMBs. And what makes me laugh, I was having a chat to a guy on my course yesterday who's got an Epic, original Epic. And he's watching all these Epic freestyles around and he's saying, so are these like what? I said, no, it's the same glider. He said, are they different? What's different about them? They're a little bit stronger. They're made more for the job. But ironically, a super safe low end B can be really good fun for learning on it. It's very ironic to me that this incredibly safe, lovely glider can also be an incredible thing to learn acro.
I mean, if you watch really what an acro glider is, it's not a super high performance glider. It's usually a pretty basic glider in its roots, and an ENB, a low NB like the Epic is perfect because it doesn't shoot, and what you want on an acro glider is that something that does not shoot too hard, which seems weird for people who are not flying acro. But if you are flying acro, you understand that a glider that does not shoot too hard is really good to learn on. You want a glider that spins and is really compact when it spins, so it needs to have a lower aspect ratio. So you need all those kind of criteria which are fully into the Epic. Well, the Epic was a happy mistake. No one really planned for it to be that good in acro, but it is, and it's working amazing.
And it proves your point of what you were saying.
Yeah, it just, you can have this one glider and do everything, and you can do, with the Epic, you can do hardcore tricks, you can even do some asymmetric sat, even tumblings. If you have a bit loaded on it, and it works very good. We will not do infinite, of course, but you can do so many tricks. So I think this is really cool, and it's increased a lot the safety within paraglider. It created a new problem, though, is that the Epic is so easy and safe, and at some point when you reach the maximum potential of your Epic and you want to go to an acro glider, the gap is a bit big.
Agreed.
It's a bit big, but it's manageable.
Yeah.
You just need to change at the right moment rather than doing the mistake everyone is doing, which is flying for all summer with the Epic, and in September where they have to go to work, they buy the Emily, don't fly for 3 years, and then they come back, and then it's kind of a big gap. While if you change mid-season, then it's an easier gap to cross.
I think it's very good to mention that, and I agree with you completely. The Epic is wonderful, but it's very pitch stable.
Yeah.
It will just come out without you having to do much. And it's not the pilot's fault, but that's how you learn to fly your glider.
Yeah.
So they start coming out, and you start to learn that you don't really have to do much to catch dives, and then you go on to the more sporty, the
acro wings,
exactly, and they pitch and they dive, and they need catching, and it's very important for pilots to be aware. It's a great learning tool, confidence booster, fantastic bit of kit, but to take the mindset of we need to understand that the other gliders have energy.
It's a funny thing, and I think it changed. I've seen it change the last 3-4 years. And it's mainly, our fault as acro instructors, is that we pushed our pilots to fly Epics, and we ended up with pilots who suddenly have a glider which is really easy compared to before, where it was a struggle to do an Ellie, everything was a struggle.
Yeah.
And now we end up with pilots with zero flying experience. Their takeoff skills are so poor, their landing skills are so poor, thermaling skills poor, but they are flying helis and they are flying Mach twist and they are flying all the tricks in the air in a perfect stable air in Holly Dennis, and then they arrive to a normal flying spot where the takeoff is a bit tricky and it's a disaster. And it's funny because we used to have acro pilots who were at the top of their game, ground handling wise, landing super safe, really safe in all conditions, and we are slowly moving right now to a category of pilots who learn in courses. So because of the courses they had access to knowledge, faster progression, better gliders, and suddenly they have zero paragliding skills because we cannot teach them paragliding in our courses. We teach them acro, they pay for it. We cannot teach them everything, so
a very valid point.
We have, it's weird. It's a weird era we are living right now.
And so what would be your advice? Theo de Blic, with all the things you've done, the knowledge you have, what would be the advice that you would give to pilots who are coming to learn, who are wanting to get into it, who maybe there's some that really want to go down the competition route to try and break into that world, maybe the amateur pilot that just wants to have fun?
I think if you can spend time to find a spot which is really flyable, like Organia, or even a spot which is thermal flyable, and spend hours in the air, because at some point nothing is gonna beat air time. And if you're able to spend hours in the air in various conditions, various takeoff time conditions, doing ground handling, really spending your time trying to stay in the air rather than just going for a 2 weeks holiday in some place and just doing runs after runs after runs, I think this would be quite efficient and you would get quite fast a really good level. You need a bit more time and you need to invest a bit more time in it, but not necessarily much more money. Just in terms of time, it's a bit more hard, but I think that would help most pilots to really spend time in the air rather than just do tricks in the box. Yeah,
absolutely. All-round skills. It's a 3-stage part. You've got to take off to fly, and you've got to land.
But it does pain me a bit to say it, because it used to be that acro pilot used to be the pilot that flies the most, and it still is for the top level acro guys. No one is flying more, whether they're cross-country pilots or anyone are spending more airtime. But this new era, new generation is actually closer to what cross-country pilots were 20 years ago. Pilots who just fly in the perfect condition, in the perfect place, and they do their flight, land, and then don't fly for another month, and then they do their flight, land, and don't fly for another month with poor takeoff skills, poor landing skills, and this is what acro is turning into, more like like a daredevil sport where they're just like seeking adrenaline for one run and then they're not interested
They're coming
in the
to
rest.
Disneyland. They have a week in Disneyland. They go on all the rides and then they go back to their normal life.
Exactly, and it's really good for our business. That is true.
Yeah.
But it pains me a little bit that it is so, because it is what we used to criticize, and I used to personally criticize when in the cross-country scene, which actually evolved toward more pilots spending more time in the air and discovering more different aspects of flying. And right now, acro has moved, I felt, a bit backwards towards that aspect.
I agree. I mean, one of these things I love and I want to be with these podcasts is a chance to be able to get this message out.
Yeah.
You know, it's great, guys. We're having a wonderful time, but please, we've got to respect what we're doing. You need to be good. You need to go out and practice your ground handling. You need to be dedicated towards what you're doing. You need to be good at landing. You know, you need to be safe, and it doesn't just come from being in the air. It comes from being safe on launch, from safe on landing.
Yeah, what you have to understand is that being in Holydenis, for example, and spending a week with Rise, and we teach you acro, so you usually live doing helicos, pretty nice, and those kind of stuff. You fly another week in Holydenis and you learn a bunch by yourself and you feel super confident. But when you're gonna arrive, let's say, to Organia on day one in Organia at midday, this is gonna be another story for you, and it should not be, because your technical skills should be able to be transported to that special spot, but they are not, because you just lack the experience and the understanding.
Yeah.
And I think that is what people should focus on, because right now we are really trying, people are just doing acro and not flying anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's weird.
Really true. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. The reason Theo and I can talk today is because the mountain's closed for bike race, and just there when you were saying that crucial point, a helicopter just flew straight over.
I think it's okay. It looks like the timeline is still right.
Got it. And so from here, where does Theo de Blic go here? For sure, you're going to be back next season. Yeah. In the competition scene.
100% sure. I don't want to stay on being second. I actually made statistic the day after the comp. I made a full Excel file with statistic about all the season where I fucked up, where I lost that fucking 0.3 points out of 250.
How close is that though, Tell
Yeah, this was
for you. It's disappointing or it's painful. Yeah. For me, it's great to watch these two athletes go at it. It makes for a great.
The most painful for me was that I lost almost 1.5 points in run 3 of that comp. Stupidly, not by a technical mistake. I just added a trick to my run and I lost 1 point because of that trick, because it fucked up the right and left criterias, and so that point would have matched the 0.3 points. But I think that I thought that it grew a bit deeper than this, so I made statistic. I tried to understand a bit better, and I started to train actually straight afterwards. And so I will be back next season.
And it's tough, eh? I didn't realise that, having spoken to Luke in the previous podcast, how technical it is. How much kind of strategy you need to do. Are you thinking about winning this one event? Are you thinking about winning overall? It's a really strategic event.
Yeah. There is like a really strategy, and the building the run is really important. So here my mistake came from building the run, and I did another mistake in Soncho, which was betting too much on my altitude, and I didn't have enough altitude to complete my run, which cost me a lot more than expected. So it's really strategic, and it's what I love actually about it, because I really love to build my runs, and somehow I got beaten by my own game in building my runs this season. But it's a really interesting era for acro comps, and right now in acro comps what is amazing is that we have the qualifier, which I think is a great step forward for everyone, because before you came to an acro comp and you were competing against the pros, so against me, against Luke, against Horacio when he was there, and so you could not hope to do any better than top 15, and top 15 was like a win. And right now I think with the qualifier it opens up a bit more.
So what does that mean? I don't actually understand. What do you mean by qualifier?
we split up the comps into 2 categories. We have the pro categories, so more or less the top 12, and then all the other competitors are in the amateur categories, so they're kind of a League 2.
Yes.
And they are all coming there, and they are battling for a chance to actually enter the Pro Tour in the next season. So the top 2 of the qualifier enter the Pro Tour. Right. And so those qualifiers are battling against each other, and it makes a comp which is easier, so the level is a bit lower. The strategy is less important. We also soften the rules a little bit, so if in our comp in the Pro Tour you cannot repeat any maneuver during a comp, So basically, you have to have a huge tool set in order to win. While in the qualifier, after 2 runs, there is a reset, and you can redo your run again. So basically, it's a bit easier to compete. The strategy is less important. The cleanness is a bit more important. You don't have to fly all the tricks. You just have to fly 2 runs, which are good. So I think that it broadened a bit the possibilities to compete for people. And then we saw quite good. We had like 45 qualifiers this year, which was quite a lot compared to the years before, which brings us to almost 60 competitors in the ranking, which is a lot. It's never been seen before. So it's pretty good. And the level was really wide. So the range of level from pilots, we had like some pilots who were really beginners, some pilots who were almost pros and who were battling to enter the Pro Tour, and it created really 3 different rankings within the ranking, which was really interesting. And I hope that in the next season it's gonna like keep increasing and people are gonna get more and more interested into it.
And you've been, again, I don't know if many people know, you've been heavily involved in modernising the whole comp scene.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that you do behind the scenes. I think a lot of people don't see to be able to bring this more modern
the
aspect.
funny thing is, when I did my first full season, at the end of the season, I saw a lot of flaws because I'm kind of a math guy and I can really like understand those kind of judging system, etc. And I saw that there was a lot of flaws in the system straight away, but I didn't want to involve myself so much. And because I was one of the only one who spoke in a decent English and who could write a decent English, because I was actually learning English at the university. So the guy from the FAI, the guy who was managing it, said, "Okay, you want to be part of that system and to change things." And over the years, I kind of climbed up the ladder, and now I'm head of the committee at the FAI, managing the acro comps. And since last year, I'm the head of that committee, and so I try to help acro as much as I can by doing the rules. So I'm not doing the rules alone. We are like 5 people. We are a committee of 5. Luke is part of that committee, and so we are like voting on the rules. But my big part and what I'm really proud of is I'm responsible for the calendar. And so since that was my first year, I was responsible for the calendar, and before we had 2 comps per year. This year we had 5 plus the 6th one as the French championship, and this is what I'm really happy with. So the comp above ground, and we managed to have more comps and to have a more interesting season, because after 2 comp, well, sometimes it's the ranking could change a bit, and here after 5 comp, then we could really see who was the best, So Luke won the season after 5 comp. It's like a fully deserved title, There is no question. One year, it was in 2015, we had 1 comp. Before I really started winning, we had only 1 comp on that season, which was... So actually, we didn't even have a world ranking because we needed 2 comps to have a world ranking. So it was 2016, sorry. But anyway... So yeah, it's when you win now with 5 comps, so like as Luke did, you deserve it. You were the best after 17 runs. So this proves something, This is like
it's
an
really
achievement.
Earned.
It's really earned, and I think that is really cool that we actually managed to finally reach that in acro, because it took so many years to reach that amount. And I hope we can stay there and we can like keep adding. People who are motivated to organize competition and
can you see a lot of young kids still coming through? Can you see a lot of new talent coming through? It seems to be a huge. Look at how many people, like we said earlier, are doing acro here. It's huge. It's getting huge. So
many people doing acro. So young kids. There was a big gap between I think 2 years ago and 6-7 years ago, where we found so many young kids coming up. And in the last 2 years, I've seen quite a bunch of young kids here in Turkey. Some young kids are really good. In France, we have a lot of young kids also coming, Switzerland. So I think there is right now a new generation coming, but there was a big gap in the last like 6-7 years with where our generation, so mine, Jack's, Elliot's, were still the youngest. Yeah. And now there is a younger generation coming in. It's quite fun. It's quite good.
And look at the progression. I mean, since when you started to what is available to pilots now, the knowledge base, the people who know the tricks, I'm jealous of the young lads or girls who are coming into it
this would have been so good. Like, they learn so fast because they have access to the wings are amazing, I mean, when I started, I had to sew my wings so that it worked better and that it would do infinite. And now it's just like you get the wing, it's perfect from day one, and it's so good and it's so cool to see, and it's so much safer as well.
Yes.
So we have so little accident in acro flying.
Really true.
compared to the amount of people we have flying acro right now, and when I was a kid, the number of accident acro flying was huge, and we were a tenth of the amount we are now. So we improved so much in terms of safety. It's so good.
It's something that I've liked, and a lot of people have complimented you on, is you're not afraid to put up. Like I saw the other week, I mean, you're always pushing, and you had reserve number 17.
Yeah.
And I saw the video, and I really respect that. And when you were learning or when you were creating the Superstore to Infinite, was it like 14? You made a great
26
video.
tries, yeah.
26 tries. And I think people really appreciate when you guys, you look on Instagram, everything's perfect.
Yeah.
One brilliant run out of 10, and that's the one that goes on social media. No one gets to see, and the problem is it can become intimidating for people learning. Go, well, I keep making mistakes, so I have this. The pros just seem to get it right every time. And for me, you've always been, look, here I am, I'm trying this. Look, it didn't go right, boff, I'm trying again. Okay, it's going better. I threw my reserve, it's no problem. And it inspires people to go, oh, God, look, he's human. Theo de Blic's actually human. I really respect that.
Right, the funny thing is, when I started to fly, there was a lot of rescue shaming. So when I started to fly acro, there was a lot of rescue shaming from those generation, like Team Elliott and the older generations. They were like always rescue shaming me because I was putting more rescues than them actually. And they were like, yeah, you put the rescue, you are dangerous, you're a terrible pilot. And I used to find it weird, but it was a consensus at the time. So I was like, okay, it's weird, but... And then when I started to get a bigger voice and I started to be able to express really what I felt, I really wanted people to know that pulling a rescue is no problem. Actually, it's not pulling it the problem. Pulling a rescue is really nice. If you don't pull your rescue, that's where you are dangerous. But if you are pulling it even for nothing, this is quite okay. And I really try to push in that direction. And that's why I'm actually happy to say I pulled Rescue 17, although Rescue 17 would have been easily avoided since it's my really own fuck up, but otherwise I'm quite happy when I pull the rescue. It's a day which doesn't bother me so much. Good. I just pull my rescue, watch the video, learn from it, go up again.
It's what it's there for. Yeah. There is no shame in it. It's, if you're in trouble, that's what it's there for. We throw it, we pack, we go back up, you learn, you progress. And you're right, there used to be reserve shaming. It used to be an embarrassing, it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, it is so bad. Like people actually survived. They did the right thing, and it should be rewarded in terms of like, okay, you did the right thing, you did good. And I think this is quite important.
Me too, I totally agree. And where do we go now? So we were saying next season you're going to be competing. Yeah. Where, you're still, 28, 29?
29.
29?
Next I will be 30.
So, I'm going to be 44. So, you've got a long time. There's a lot still to come from Theo de Blic, I believe.
Yeah, I think I'm going to, compete for several years. My contract with Nova is a long-lasting contract, so I should be quite certain on that. So I'm gonna be competing. I'm gonna be focusing on Rise, also to make Rise grow and to try to build up our business a bit. But mostly I'm gonna be training, flying, trying to stay in the scene and doing the tutorials and all those stuff that I've been doing because I really enjoy what I'm doing. So I'm gonna just keep doing it.
And the tutorials are great. For people who haven't seen them, I love them. They're an epic set of tutorials that you do. There's a great one, and people quote this line all the time, and it's so true that, for a while, infinite tumble was the ultimate trick, and people were doing it, and actually, it's not that hard a trick. It takes good timing and it takes a big set of balls. But you were saying, and there's this great, if you don't mind me quoting this one, people say all the time, okay, you've done your first tumbling, well done, it's easy, or I'm getting it wrong now, I'm in front of you. But there's some great bits in the tutorial where you'll just bring everyone down to earth. Congratulations, you've done that trick, that's brilliant. But don't get ahead of yourself. Yeah. Concentrate, there's a lot more that goes to it. There's a lot more technical stuff that you can learn.
Yeah, the thing is that Infinity is such a goal for everyone, where it's just one trick, and we have so many more tricks which are a lot more difficult. Yes. And there is a lot of people respecting other pilots because they did one trick. Yeah. And what I've always found weird is that as soon as someone is doing Infinity, is giving advices to all his pilots friends, whether they are acro pilots or not, and he's helping them out for everything, where he doesn't necessarily have the skills, he just had the possibility to pull hard, release, and stay hands up, which is not that complicated. And I think so people have to understand that. Yeah. And that was also the idea behind the tutorial. It was to break a bit the misconception, and mostly because I was trained in France, which is amazing for being trained in paragliding. The amount of great instructors, great SIVs we have is tremendous. We have so many good people and good information. But then when I started to travel as a pro pilot, I understood that in Asia this is completely fucked. You go to Africa, this is completely fucked. You have no information. You start to fly by yourself. You jump from the mountain, hope for the best, and no one is teaching you. And the person teaching you can have maybe 2 flights already, you know. So this is why I started the tutorial. First, it was to try to give some basic information to people who had no idea. And that's why the tutorial are mainly in English as well, because it was not for French people. So French people always complain that I do the tutorial in English, but the idea was not that it was not supposed to be used for them. You know, they have the money, they have the abilities to pay for a course. It was for this Asian kid who have no idea and needs that specific instruction.
And it was brilliant, you know, the thing I quoted earlier about you've done your first tumble, it's easy. Actually, a lot of people say that, and it just makes people realise, just because you've done that doesn't mean you're an acro god, and it doesn't put you on some pedestal anywhere else. Congratulations, it's a trick, but it's not the be-all.
Yeah, there is like this saying, mostly in Organia, like you're like, what do you say, Gerlitz and pilot. So you know the Gerlitz and pilot is a typical acro pilot, which is like he's very good in Gerlitz and he's flying good. And when he arrives in Organia, I understand that he flies like shit. And this is what I'm trying to advertise, that the level in acro is so high that you could fly great in your home spot, but when you're gonna be faced with the real level of acro pilot, you're like, fuck, this is hard and this is really complicated and this is way too much, you know. And so that's what I would like people to understand, is that acro needs time and dedication, and don't get too proud of yourself because you manage some steps. There's a lot more steps, and don't put other people into dangerous situation because you feel good about yourself. That is the most important.
And does it make you proud when you see, you know, you came up with all the twisted or lots of twisted combinations of tricks, when you see other pilots doing it? Do you feel proud to watch people doing something that you spent time and dedication creating, and now you're seeing these other pilots doing it?
No, actually, I don't even think of it that way. When I see someone doing twisted infinity, I don't even think of it as my trick. I just think I don't even notice it. I don't realize it as it is. And I spoke to it about Raoul about infinite. I think it's a bit the same for him. He doesn't, when he see people doing infinite, he doesn't feel proud because someone is doing infinite, you know. And no, it's just I'm super happy when I see people flying acro and flying clean, and I'm still that kid at heart when he sees someone flying clean. He's like, wow, this was clean, and I would like to do the same, you know. In my head, it's like, this was clean and I hope I fly as clean. Also, I do a lot of tricks. I'm amazed when I see some clean tricks.
And before we wrap it up, I've got to talk to you about the sizes of gliders you have. You came down into the side. Was it a 9 meter? Or what's the smallest one you have here?
I have the 9.5. Yeah.
You helied it the other day, and it looked like a toy. I was watching you from my boat, and the speed it was going round, it didn't look real. I mean, how are you coping with these? What's the idea behind these? What are you doing it for fun?
I don't know if you remember, Paltakats had what he called the Wing Load project.
Yes,
2010. From like 20, so he had the tandem at 32, and then he tried to fly alone on a 24, and then he went to the freeload 12. And I was like, wow, this is super cool. And in my head, I was like, this is amazing. He flies a super small glider. And I was thinking I would never be able to have these kind of opportunities because it costs money to actually, for a brand to give you those gliders. What I learned afterwards is actually it was not his gliders, it was U-turns, and they were just sending them to him. Right. But anyway, so as soon as I signed with Gradient, I had access to incredible amount of money because then I had a full support of a company and I was the official pilot there, and I could ask for whatever I wanted. So I was like, okay, let's make the agility 14. I want faster because I always liked fast connection. I was like fast shoot. So let's make the agility 14, and then I made the agility 14 as a joke. I didn't want to, just wanted to fly it sometimes. Then I competed with it, and so I was like, okay, let's make agility 11 now, because they really told me no limits. They told me, you want something, you ask, and I said, okay, I just have to ask. So I had some limits in the meaning that they say we would like it not to cost us too much money. So what they told me is you want something, you ask. We're going to make it in the computer, but you will have to do it by yourself. So you will have to cut the pattern, everything. Right. So every time I had to cut for like 48 hours the pattern in Czech Republic, driving 2,000 kilometers, cutting patterns for 48 hours, coming back, you know. And so I had this Agility 11, which was great. And when I arrived to Nova, they made me the glitch. So in 14, and immediately after I asked for the glitch 9 because I was like, okay, this can be fun. And it is fun. And it is how I can find, because I don't have so much pressure when I fly. I'm not scared of. The only thing I'm scared of is to missing my run, so not flying clean. Also, it's a pressure that over put onto me because everyone expected me for many years to be the best acro pilot in the world, and they expect me to never fuck up. So if I'm flying in Holy Dennis and I do my run and I fuck up, I feel that I'm disappointing the people who are watching, you know. They are expecting to see an amazing clean run, and if I'm training something I don't master and I fuck up, they're like...
It's pressure, right?
Yeah, it's pressure.
I feel the same here. A lot of the times I come out to do a run and I'll just do the run I know.
Yeah.
Because my students are watching.
Yeah,
I can't push. I don't want to learn this or learn that because I'm going to make a mess. That's what you do. Or I'm going to make mistakes. But there's that pressure of, I don't want someone to go, well, I thought he was a good pilot. Now look at the,
Exactly. So that's the only pressure I feel now. And I was like, with the 9, it will be a different pressure. The pressure will be to fly the tricks I know how to fly, but to fly them clean. So that's quite fun. But to be honest, the 9 is scary though. It's still scary to me.
It looks terrifying. The speed that you were whizzing around.
The funny thing is that it's not in the air that it is scary. It is on landing and on takeoff. Because this glider, I discovered it on the first flight, cannot fly hands up. When you go hands up, it's vibrating, and then it's collapsing.
Oh.
So if it's turbulent, it's a bit shit because I have to fly with brakes. So I'm always flying with brakes, and when it's turbulent, my brake range is like really weird because I cannot go hands up to penetrate. So it's like hitting the thermal. I have to brake it, but I'm awfully close to the stall point, so I cannot brake it too much. So then I'm not coping well with turbulences, and on landing I cannot go hands up. So I cannot really flare well, but if I don't flare, I'm crashing like hard because I have a 9 square meters. So it's really on landing and takeoff that it's tricky. In the air, the speed is manageable, really. But it's really the rest, like all the side effects of flying a 9 acro wing, which is...
I always see you land it on the beach, and it's for that reason that...
Yeah, I land on the sand because I'm thinking I'm going to crash land anyway. So and I cannot avoid people like I do with the 14, so, you know. So that's why.
Look what you've done to the acro world now. You went to the 14, and how many pilots now?
Everyone is in the 14. Actually, we moved to 13 that season. A lot of us moved to 13. Yeah. But the funny thing is, at the beginning, I didn't move to 14 to compete. I moved to 14 to have fun. Right. And it is true that it is more fun. And I moved to 13 this year not to compete, but also for training because it's more fun in training. Because right now, the 13 is more of an annoyance than a benefit in comp because you arrive lower, you do less tricks. Yeah. So it's not working as well, and that's why I don't fly the 9 in comp because I do like divide by 2 the number of tricks I can do. Yeah, of course. So the small sizes in comp right now, we are a bit on the limit with the 14s. Everything below is more annoying than helpful, really. But it's fun for training. And then it's hard to train with a smaller wing and compete with a bigger one, so we just compete with the same. Yeah. So yeah. And we spend a lot more time training than competing in the end. So yeah.
Fantastic, buddy. Theo, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
We overpassed the time quite a lot.
It's well worth it, buddy.
I have a briefing in 10 minutes.
Oh, do you? Yeah. It's back to work. Dude, I'm glad we could make this happen.
Glad we had this talk.
Let's get back to work, and hopefully we can do this again in the future. Let's see how next season goes. I mean, the very best of luck with next season. No doubt you will be back. You will be back at full power. And it's for us guys enjoying it and watching you. It's going to be an amazing second season of Acro Comps.
I hope we have as thrilling season as we had that year. It was great.
Brilliant.
Tiring, but great.
Off to your briefing, and we will catch you on the next one.
Boom.
And there we have it. What an incredible privilege that was to be able to sit down and have such a frank and candid chat to Theo. An amazing guy, an incredibly lovable personality, and an absolute demon of a pilot. The next couple of seasons is going to be super interesting. There's a long way to go for our world of acro. In the meantime, we have lots of other episodes coming for you with a lot more content as always. We've got a lot more guests coming up for the hot seat. I'll keep it a secret for now, but you will find out soon enough what our next one will be about. In the meantime, thank you ever so much for your support with this. We absolutely love doing it. Everyone loves taking part in it. It's fantastic. And it doesn't work without you guys. So we really appreciate your support with this. Stay tuned, and we will be back very soon for another episode of the Paragliding Debrief.